Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Kanishka Gupta. It's the 3rd of July 2023 and here are the top stories for the day. Has Byjus finally acknowledged its problems? Is monsoon tourism bad for Indian hills? What are the key risks for the markets in H2 CY23? And what is Uniform Civil Code? Byjus has been in the news for a while now. Its co-founder and CEO Byju is busy fighting battles on several fronts, from trying to come out with its financial statement on time to winning the faith of its investors and employees. The leadership claims it has understood its mistakes and is rectifying them. But is Byjus really ready to turn a new leaf? Debarga Sanyal brings you the answer.
Byju Ravindran is in a firefighting mode. Soon after addressing employees in a virtual town hall, the 43-year-old CEO of the country's most valued startup shot off an email to them, saying, "Tough times may test us, but they also reveal our true strength. I assure you that EdTech is here to stay. We are here to stay. We have not come this far to only come this far." But it seems the road ahead is more than just bumpy. Both in his town hall address and in the email, Ravindran has accepted that the company is facing headwinds, and the last few days were particularly rough. The company defaulted on its loan repayment and took the lender to court. Its 3 directors quit without citing any reason, and its auditor Deloitte too parted ways over Byjus' long-delayed financial statements for the year ended March 2022. But Byjus' Ravindran is confident of tiding over the crisis. He has assured shareholders that the company is on a strong footing. He also stressed that the valuation of the company was intact at $22 billion. But Dutch-listed technology investor Prosus NV recently slashed the valuation of Byjus to $5.1 billion. It is a drop of over 75% from the startup's $22 billion valuation last year. Meanwhile, reports have emerged that Byjus is in advanced talks with prospective new shareholders for a $1 billion fundraising round in an attempt to sidestep a revolt by some investors. The EdTech startup is offering benefits to potential investors, including preferential treatment in the case of liquidation, the report said, adding that none of its existing shareholders have a so-called liquidation preference. Byjus seeks to close a round within 2 weeks, according to media reports. Ravindran assured employees that the Term Loan B dispute may be resolved without court intervention. He also insisted that the board member resignations were a mutually agreed upon decision and are unrelated to Deloitte's resignation. Ravindran's claims that the company is close to achieving profitability at group level cannot be confirmed as the firm is yet to file its FY22 financials. In the FY21 results, which were delayed by almost 18 months, it reported losses of 4,588 crore rupees, 19 times more than the preceding year. In the last 1 year, the company has laid off close to 3,500 employees in its bid to become more efficient and profitable. So, has Byjus really understood and acknowledged its problems? Is it ready to rectify its mistakes and face its challenges?
Just by acknowledging them, it is not clear what indications they're sending to media or its stakeholders for it to acknowledge. The problems are fairly deep in that sense. So it is not clear how they will raise new funds. So they need to raise new funds at whatever low valuation possible from new investors, 1 or 2 by selling off some business, which is also not going to be easy, which is going to be very time consuming.
Byjus has understood that it is not possible to remain non-transparent. Their rectification path will have to be a very swift closure of both their 22 and 23 accounts, and indeed should actually get their quarterly accounts audited for the first 2 quarters I think it is very important that all responsible and large startups get very focused on high quality governance.
And what immediate steps should the ailing edtech unicorn take to right the ship?
The most brutal thing to do is for the founders to step away, leave the board and leave the company, and for someone else to take charge of the company. That is when there will be honest, I would say, a catharsis, honest change for the company. Otherwise, it's not going to be easy.
Experts are united in their opinion that Byjus needs an immediate board change, both as a positive indication for their employees and customers, as well as the first step in the path to recovery. Whether the company really understands its mistakes and wants to rectify them will depend on how swiftly it takes such definitive steps.
Clearly, it will be a while before Byjus comes out of this stormy weather. Meanwhile, the hills of our country too are reeling under rough weather. Rains have triggered landslides and several paths are cut off, leaving hundreds of tourists stranded. Over the years, monsoon tourism has gained popularity in the country, but concerns are also being raised about its impact on the fragile ecosystems of Indian hills. So is monsoon tourism bad for the country's hills? Ayush Mishra finds out.
India has a rich repository of languages, culture, and scenic beauty. This diversity makes the country a tourist hotspot in South Asia. And mountains are an important part of the mix, particularly during the monsoon season. From the mighty Himalayas to the Western Ghats, Vindhyas, and Satpura, they attract visitors from around the world for their pristine beauty and diversity. During the summer months, the mountains become the preferred gateway for people. Development of urban facilities and last-mile connectivity has made the mountains a favorite during the monsoon as well. But the recent spate of landslides, cloudbursts, and land subsidence serve as an indicator that the ecosystem of the hills is disturbed, particularly during the monsoon season, which sees significant arrival of tourists. The thriving tourism industry has resulted in economic benefits in the hills, including job growth, increased sales, and flourishing of handicraft and traditional products.
Many of the mountain states of India, especially Uttarakhand, where there is a pilgrimage tourism like Kedarnath, there are many places like this where people are depending a lot on the tourism, especially during the monsoon season, which is giving them a lot of avenues.
While tourism boosts the hill economy, unrestricted influx of tourists during monsoon has a greater negative impact on the fragile flora and fauna of these regions. The need of the hour is effective government policies to make tourism sustainable for all seasons.
When we talk about the hill tourism, we need to be experiencing as well as planning for responsible tourism. And if I just take an example of one state, which is Uttarakhand, there is a recent policy that the state government came out, which talks about high value and low volume tourism. Important thing is that, yes, we need to look at tourism as a potential revenue generation avenue. However, the carrying capacity of every destination needs to be looked at and should be monitored, should be managed in a much more responsible manner.
The Ministry of Tourism has set a target of increasing the size of India's tourism economy to $1 trillion by 2047. It demonstrates the government's commitment to supporting this vital sector, but it should also focus on sustainable development so that the hill ecosystem is maintained.
Sustainable tourism in the hill areas, there are many areas of intervention that we need to look at, starting with the development and the construction aspects, which actually leads to several disasters in the states and in the cities, in the hill areas. and hence a very good control on the development and the construction, and especially on the disaster resilient infrastructure aspects. Second aspect of sustainability can be around waste management, and for which several of these policies in the hill states, they are actually addressing those aspects, which is about the waste management, including the food waste. The third important aspect of sustainability is conserving and focusing on natural heritage, natural resources, and preserving those natural resources.
Monsoon tourism in the hills leads to issues like congestion, stretched infrastructure, high power and water demands, pollution, damage to historical sites, rise in cost of living, and environmental crisis. Shrija S. Nair of TERI shared some measures that can address such challenges.
Every mountain state should focus upon is to give new avenues for the tourists to go. That is one thing. And the second thing they need to do is should be totally based on the carrying capacity and the footprint. How much a tourist area can take, that has to be taken into account before permitting any kind of tourist activity. These restrictions are only based on if there is a heavy rainfall and a flood. They stop only because it can be hazardous to their life or they get stranded, and not because it's going to harm the environment and ecosystem. And there should be more encouragement to people who are using natural means of transport, like walking by foot, or people who are using porters, they are who are going using mules and all. So for all those kind of traditional transportation means to be encouraged in tourist places instead of providing choppers till the last end.
Tourism is a primary source of income for the people living in the hills, but the influx of unchecked number of visitors during the rainy season can pose a threat to the fragile ecosystem of the region. Drawing inspiration from Bhutan, which emphasizes high-value tourism, it is imperative that hill destinations of the country also adopt sustainable tourism practices in keeping with regional sensitivities. Responsible behavior among tourists and stakeholders can also go a long way in mitigating the adverse impact of tourism in the hills during monsoon.
Meanwhile, Indian equities are on cloud 9. The benchmark indices closed the first half of CY23 at record high levels. However, as we enter the second half of the year, the risks too are piling up. In our next report, Nikita Vashisht gives a lowdown of factors which may dent the market sentiment.
Equity markets are having a dream run at the bourses as investors bet on India's economic resilience at a time when leading economies are facing recession fears. The confidence has lifted benchmark S&P BSE Sensex to its fresh record high of 64,769, which it hit on Friday, June 30th. The broader Nifty 52 notched a new lifetime high of 19,202 the same day. However, analysts say risks are beginning to mount now, especially related to the monsoon back home.
But spatial distribution is quite pathetic. As of today, according to IMD, out of 36 subdivisions, only about 16 subdivisions have got normal or above normal rainfall, which means more than 50% of subdivisions have failed to get normal rainfall, which is a concern. If it doesn't improve substantially, the spatial distribution of rainfall next 1 month, then a lot of damage would have done.
That apart, outcomes of various state elections are the second near-term monitorable.
We are entering a heavy election year. Between now and next May, there are 10 state elections and including the general election. In November, we are having elections in 4 key states, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and in Telangana. The results of that will determine the mood of the people and how the next year's election will pan out.
On the global front, analysts say significant growth slowdown in developed economies may be sentimentally negative for the markets in the near term.
If either it gets into recession or growth slips down below 1%, then yes, short term we'll have pain. In deceleration goods export, even service exports could be affected. India would gain out of crash in the oil prices. The interest rate upturn cannot continue. Therefore, more flow would come to Indian markets because here interest rates would be higher and also, opportunity in the market would be better.
That said, analysts believe markets may rally another 6 to 10% by the end of December 2023 if they successfully maneuver through these headwinds. On Monday, July 3rd, markets will react to auto sales data for June and await the manufacturing PMI data in India and the US for the previous month.
He's making plans for an early retirement. Business Standard.
After the markets, let us turn our gaze to the corridors of politics. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently made a pitch for the Uniform Civil Code just a week after 22nd Law Commission invited the views of the public and religious organizations on it. But ever wondered, what is Uniform Civil Code? We decode it for you.
Uniform Civil Code calls for a common set of laws to govern personal matters, such as marriage, divorce, adoption, and inheritance. The term Uniform Civil Code is mentioned in Part 4 of Article 44 of the Indian Constitution. It says that the state shall endeavour to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. Part 4 of the Constitution outlines the directive principles of state policy, which, while not enforceable or justiciable in a court of law, are fundamental to the country's governance. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constituent Assembly of India, had said that a UCC is desirable, but for the moment, it should remain voluntary. Thus, Article 35 of the draft constitution was added as a part of the directive principles of the state policy in Part 4 of the Constitution of India as Article 44. It was incorporated in the constitution as an aspect that would be fulfilled when the nation would be ready to accept it. A UCC seeks to create one law for the entire country in relation to personal matters like marriage, divorce, adoption, and inheritance. Such a UCC would be applicable to all religious communities as well. At present, these personal matters are covered under personal laws that apply to each religious community separately. A UCC would abolish these community-specific personal laws and make the same law applicable to every individual. For example, the Hindu Succession Act was passed by the Parliament in 1956. It applies to Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, and Jains. However, Christians, Muslims, and Parsis have their own community-specific laws that relate to succession. A UCC, if enforced, would make it the same for everyone. At present, UCC is enforced only in the state of Goa. The Goa Civil Code was given by the Portuguese in 1867. Uttarakhand, meanwhile, is working on one as well. The implementation of a UCC has also been a part of the BJP's manifesto since inception. In 2016, the Narendra Modi government had requested the 21st Law Commission of India to determine how to form a code in the presence of thousands of personal laws in the country. In 2018, the Law Commission submitted a 185-page consultation paper on the reform of family law. While saying that a UCC is neither necessary nor desirable at this stage, the Law Commission recommended that discriminatory practices, prejudices, and stereotypes within a particular religion and its personal laws should be studied and amended.
Nation's trusted bank, SBI, the banker to every Indian.
Meanwhile, the Aam Aadmi Party has extended in-principle support to the Uniform Civil Code while calling for a wider consultation with everyone. That is all for today. For more news and analysis, please log into business-standard.com. For more news, views and updates, subscribe to Business Standard on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast and Spotify. Also follow us on YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn.